Hello and welcome to the special coverage of Mint's India Investment Summit 2020. On the sideline of the panel, I'm in conversation with Kosturi Ghosh. She is a partner at Trilegal. So, Kosturi, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're talking about scaling up. So, according to you, what is the mount and what is the landscape that you are expecting as far as the investment goes in India in 2020?
I think after a pretty tough year, I think around the world, one would expect that the investment would be more on the muted side. But of course, having spoken to clients on the ground and to the startups as well, it would appear that there is, of course, a constant need of cash. Especially in light of what's going on in the country now. So I think the canvas is still as large as it was. The question is really going to boil down to what are the fundamentals of these companies, how good are they, how robust are they, and therefore are they able to attract the right kind of capital.
But as you said, there are hiccups or risks that is there. Could you elaborate what kind of risks that you see as far as investment goes, probably next year or in 2020?
Sure. I think one is the global side of risks. I think there has been a slowdown. I mean, you're looking at the GDP rates being brought down on a consistent basis. So globally, there is a shortage of capital as well. In India, if you look at the macro features, one does have some kind of a concern. Because the consumption story is slowing down. I mean, it has slowed down and it potentially could even slow down a little bit more now, given the whole virus and the impact that it has already had on the market. So there are challenges here. I think one should not shy away from talking about them. But again, it's boiling down to the fundamental story of a lot of these startups.
You mentioned about the crisis or probably liquidity drying up in the global as well as in Indian markets. Do you think because of the outbreak of the coronavirus and it has actually spread more than that was anticipated by global economists, there is a disruption in the global supply. Do you think investments will actually be put on hold because of this disruption?
I think there is a natural slowdown of the supply chain. If you look at the Chinese market, for example, Apple has rolled down its forecasts. And that the main reason because of that is both the consumption side as well as the manufacturing side, there is an issue there. So I do see the coronavirus as being a short-term challenge. I don't think it will last the whole year. But yes, there will be an impact of this, which will be here to stay. And frankly, I think it will make businesses think about doing their their supply chain models in a different manner. I think they're going to have to think about being a little bit more risk specific and risk averse. I think there will be some line of thinking around whether to put too many eggs in one basket or not.
As you mentioned about the risks right now, do you think that coronavirus could be just used as an excuse for not spending? No, not for not spending.
Right.
And because there is already a slowdown, and India, of course, has been grappling with it in the last few quarters. Data indicators show that auto sales numbers have not been encouraging at all, and the GDP is not at all encouraging for investments to come to India. At this juncture, do you think foreign investments would be looking at India as an attractive, country, or they would be probably aversive?
I mean, look, capital has to go somewhere, right? It doesn't earn money by just sitting there. So it will have to move out and find new spaces. The question is, where is it going to go? The coronavirus, in this regard, is not a major bump in the road. But again, going back to what you were saying and what I was saying earlier, it goes back to the fundamentals of this country. And those fundamentals, unfortunately, are not showing a positive sign. Right. And yes, to some extent, it might, the virus may be seen as a good way to shield a lot of our issues, which, would be a very, very wrong way to deal with it from the government side, if that's the path.
So over the years, you've been managing capital and the deal side. What has been your biggest learnings, especially after the liquidity crisis we saw in the last few years? Banks are not very, I mean, banks are hesitant in lending, and especially the smaller sector, the MSME sector, is actually struggling to get money on the table. But RBI, on its side, on its way, it's actually doing a lot of measures to do a credit transmission, but that's not happening. So what is your learnings from this 2-3 years?
I mean, speaking as a lawyer, we get involved only when the deals are ripe. So from our side, we are spending a lot more time to get deals to closure. And that's a challenge because, you typically, the deal cycle used to be much smaller, now it's longer. And there has to be a constant reassurance, I think, from both parties in terms of actually making the deal happen. So, learnings as a lawyer is not to just be superficial in terms of the documentation, but to actually enable, the sell side and the buy side have a more meaningful conversation around the deal itself.
On that note, Kosturi, thanks a lot for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
So for more details and updates, stay tuned.